Stonehenge is one of the most famous ancient sites in the world, with over 800,000 visitors each year, but it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to not only circles, but structures in general that are made from large slabs of rock. In early 2013, we toured the UK to explore some of the lesser known ancient ruins, and since that trip we have been on an amazing voyage of discovery that showed us it is not only the UK that is covered in these megalithic sites, but they also extend their reach across the entire planet. We hired a camper van equipped with a tent on the roof and started our journey at the Iceberg tip, where we paid double the price to visit before it opened, helping us to avoid the crowds and get within touching distance of the stones. It's an impressive site made from huge rocks with an average weight of around 25 tons, made even more impressive when you learn that some of the stones were quarried and transported from the Preseli Hills in Wales, approximately 170 miles away. Commonly known as a stone circle, it's actually a henge, an earthwork featuring a circular bank or mound with a ditch on the inside of it. The structure of Stonehenge is also more like a circle within a circle, with the stones in the horseshoe-shaped arrangement on the inside said to have healing properties. And it is well documented that the stones have been positioned to align with the sun setting or rising on either the winter or summer solstices. More recent discoveries have shown that the stones also have acoustic properties and ring like bells, and it's now believed the whole area was once a massive complex of burial chambers and megalithic monuments. It was announced in 2015 that recent surveys performed using ground-penetrating radar revealed 17 underground neighbouring shrines within a 12 square kilometre area, including a structure near Durrington Walls made of around 100 stones, forming part of what is being called a 1.5 kilometre wide superhenge. This part of the UK is filled with ancient sites, so we drove about 20 miles north to see the largest stone circle found so far on the face of the planet. Measuring approximately 330 metres in diameter, it's so big there is a village in the middle and a road running through it. On the inside there are also two smaller circles which when originally constructed would have had diameters of around 100 metres, but nowadays there are very few stones left, about 5 in the southern circle and 3 or 4 remaining from the northern one. The larger circle only has about 30 stones left from an original 98, stones which are larger than those found at Stonehenge, measuring between 3.5 and 4.2 metres in height, with the larger stones weighing around 40 tonnes. Avebury is also a henge, with its large bank having a diameter of 430 metres, encircling a ditch that would have been an immense task to build, as it was cut through hard chalk, with an estimated 165,000 tonnes of material excavated. The purpose of these circles is unknown. There have been many theories put forward over the years, such as it's a place to perform rituals or have funerals, and some say the taller, slender stones represent males while the shorter, wider ones represent females, but not many of these theories seem to have much concrete evidence to back them up. The circles are not the only structures found in the area, they are in fact part of an entire complex. There is the West Carnac Avenue, like a corridor of stones leading up to the main circles. There is Windmill Hill, some round barrows which look amazing from a bird's eye view. Silbury Hill, a man-made conical mound whose function is still not known to this day, and next to it is a structure known as West Carnac Long Barrow. Long barrows are long, thin structures usually found with large megalithic stones forming a structure at the front with inner chambers, and an earth mound section leading off and forming a trapezoidal shape. We visited the West Carnac Long Barrow at night as we had heard of many paranormal goings-on at the largest barrow found on British soil, over 100 metres in length and 2.4 metres high, lying in an east-west orientation. The largest stone is huge, 3 metres tall, half a metre wide, and we would guess around 20 tonnes. You can go inside where you find a 10 metre long interior made up of a corridor and 5 rooms or chambers. Again, reasons for their construction are hotly contested. They are widely believed to be burial mounds or tombs, but there are plenty of other theories.
So this room here interests me in particular because you could argue that this long barrow was a dwelling or somewhere where people lived thousands of years ago, but it would seem a bit strange to put a stone like this right in the middle of the doorway.
Peter Knight has done a lot of work at this site, and he thinks the stone blocking the entrance to one of the chambers represents a phallus, and is placed there to balance the male and female energies. He observes amazing acoustic properties inside the structure, saying there are certain sections that resonate sound waves really effectively and even generate standing waves. He has worked with dowsers, channelers and psychics and believes the barrows were used by shamans to perform rituals, contact their ancestors and achieve altered states of consciousness. He says it is very psychically active and useful for connecting to earthly energies, and that there are various solar and lunar solstice alignments, as well as a connection to the sky with a number of famous stars and constellations visible from certain chambers, such as Orion's Belt or the Pleiades. He has taken photos of orbs and energy inside. Quite a few crop circles have formed next to the barrow, and when you look at the dimensions of both the barrow and the Avebury area, you find sacred geometry patterns. It is thought there are at least 10,000 long and round barrows in the UK, so we visited another one in Oxfordshire close to the fascinating Uffington Horse, a 110-metre carving on the side of a hill formed from little trenches filled with crushed white chalk, said to be between 2,000 and 3,000 years old. This barrow is 55 metres in length and ranges from 15 to 8 metres wide with 3 small chambers, one like a corridor and 2 larger chambers attached to either side. Officially it's thought these structures were built to bury the dead because the remains of bodies were found inside, such as the 46 uncovered at West Kennet and the 15 found at Wayland Smithy, but this structure seems to have been built in 2 phases. The gaps between the megalithic stones at the front of the structure are filled with smaller slabs of stone, so we wonder if our Neolithic ancestors found an older megalithic structure and modified it using smaller building materials. Maybe they added the thin slabs and built the trapezoidal shaped earth section to place the bodies of their dead. I mean, do you really need to create a structure with acoustic resonance to keep bones in? There is another type of megalithic structure found all over the UK, although the majority are found in Wales and the southwest of England, which is why we headed down to Penzance to visit a couple of dolmen. The word dolmen means stone table, and you can understand why they have this name when you see these sculptures decorating the countryside. They are megalithic monuments that consist of 2 or more upright stones with a capstone lying across the top. This one, shaped like a mushroom, was found in this condition, whereas the other one we visited, like many, has been reconstructed. In fact, this one would have looked completely different before it suffered damage during a storm in the 1800s, as it had a 4th upright stone and used to be tall enough that a person on horseback could ride under it.
And trying to imagine what it would have looked like when they actually constructed these things, we can't really know exactly what they would have been like. There could have been wooden structures here, there could have been cloth, there could have been, a number of materials that would have eroded very quickly in the amount of time that this structure has been here. So we could really be seeing the kind of the framework of something. We don't know about the purpose, but this could just be like the kind of the car chassis, and we're missing all the parts that were wooden. Or we've got some quartz crystals growing on the rock too, which we noticed also at Chun. We noticed it's sort of maybe growing on the surface, maybe it's crystallizing or forming, it's part of the structure of the stone of some kind.
There is a large variety in the structure of the dolmen found in the UK. Sometimes they are freestanding, sometimes within a mound. They can be 30 centimetres tall with a 200 kilo capstone, or several metres tall with a capstone that weighs hundreds of tonnes, such as Brownshill Dolmen in Ireland, the largest in Europe with a 150-ton capstone. It's thought that they were used as tombs or burial chambers, and although when you go inside some of the larger ones they feel like tombs, there is actually very little evidence for this, as remains were only found at a small percentage of the sites. Also, it has been shown by carbon dating artefacts found at some of the dolmen that they were in use for hundreds of years after they were constructed, and there are certain dolmen that have been used for thousands of years but contain no bones whatsoever. It seems more likely to us that the dolmen were created in our more distant past and that later civilizations used some of them as tombs. In the early 20th century, Sir Alfred Watkins noticed how there are a large number of ancient sites running along a straight line through England, which he termed a ley line, and due to the number of churches he found called St Michael's along this line, that name has stuck. We visited one example built in the 13th century situated right on top of a hill with beautiful views over the surrounding countryside. Along this line there were also other structures from different ages, also built on top of curiously shaped hills, such as Burrow Mump or the Glastonbury Tor. It is interesting to note that Glastonbury is not only on the St Michael's ley line, but it's also said to be the heart chakra of the earth, and when you look at a map showing the location of the dolmen in this part of the world, the majority also seem to be built along this line. The existence of St Michael's churches along the St Michael's ley line suggests that these energy lines are important, and that the church builders had the same knowledge as our ancestors before us, i.e. they knew how to harness or utilise these energies. Nowadays it is widely believed that there are different currents running through the ground, the major two being St Michael's and St Mary's that move through the earth like waves, with significant structures usually found at the nodes. Dowsers say the energies are male and female, like at Avebury where Peter Knight has described the flow of the two currents.
To this, the famous St Michael line, of course, passes through the Avebury area, goes through the Henge, which we did the tour on yesterday. We had a great time dowsing around Avebury Henge. And it's only the Mary current, it's the feminine current that goes through Silbury Hill, the Spring and West Kennet Longbarrow, all feminine symbolism, and it's the Mary flow that primarily goes through. And
we stopped off at Bodmin Moor to see another site on Sir Alfred's ley line, where there are 3 stone circles ranging from 33 to 42 metres in diameter. It was pretty foggy up on the moor when we were there, so we found it difficult to find the smaller circle, which only has a couple of stones still standing and some that are partially buried. The larger two were easier to find as the centre circle has 14 stones left standing out of 28, and the northern one 15 from an original 30. To add a little confusion to our search for the third, there are 2 other stones called the Pipers around 100 metres southwest of the middle circle, thought to be the entrance stones to the site. The circles are positioned close together and possibly astronomically aligned with the Orion's belt like the pyramids in Egypt and Mexico, although when you look at a map it is not exactly convincing. While focusing on the ground to avoid stepping in puddles, we noticed lots of spherical holes and little mounds a couple of metres wide, which if you look on Google Earth you can see they form some interesting lines leading off to a point, and we wonder if this could be part of a structure buried under the ground. A recent dig revealed there is a quartz crystal pavement running between the circles, and with so many partially buried stones it is highly likely there is more beneath the soil. Since Sir Alfred Watkins made his observations, many more have added to his research, and in modern times alternative researchers believe the St Michael's ley line not only runs through England, but keeps on going and travels all around the globe until it reaches the UK again. Again, there is supposed to be both a male and a female line which cross each other at 2 points, and pass through many of the Earth's chakras. These are 2 massive energy lines, but there are many that form a huge grid covering the entire planet and connect many of the ancient sites. Professional dowsers sense these energies to find oil and water, and alternative researchers believe these megalithic sites were kind of transmitters, guiding the energy so it can be utilised or manipulated, something that seems highly possible when you look at the work of dowsers such as David Cowan. We left the southwest and started heading north along another ley line called the Belliners Line, which in the UK starts in the south at the Isle of Wight and passes through Winchester, the former capital of England, the Uffington White Horse, and the next site we visited.
We're here on this lovely English summer's day at a location not far from Oxford called the Rollright Stones. Now here we have many features. We have this stone circle that you can see behind me, and then over the other side of the road we also have a couple of barrows, a standing stone, a Saxon cemetery, and many other features from different ages. The first thing we noticed about this stone circle was the amount of erosion that has actually occurred. It seems very porous and there's very deep sort of caverns into the stone.
The structures have been given interesting names due to the legends and folklore associated with the site. The single standing stone is referred to as the King's Stone, the stones in the stone circle are the King's Men, and the Whispering Knights are the remains of the dolmen which is missing its capstone. Due to the type of stone used, this circle is pretty unique when compared to other stone circles in the UK, as the vast majority are made from tougher granite type stones, such as the next circle we went to in the Lake District. This circle is also on the Belliners Line, said to be one of the oldest circles in Britain, dated to around 3200 BC. It's thought it was a meeting place where stone axe heads were traded, but this is merely speculation as only charcoal has been found from excavations. Like with Stonehenge, this circle has solar alignments and is used in solstice celebrations. It has also been observed that the sun rises over the top of a hill 3.5 kilometres to the east during the autumn equinox, and some stones have been aligned with the midwinter sunrise in various lunar positions. There are 40 stones, the largest being 2.5 metres tall, and 10 of the stones are arranged as a rectangular enclosure on the southeast side, a feature unique to Castlerigg with nothing similar in other stone circles. We also visited another circle close by with 55 stones creating a 28 metre diameter ring. To the southeast is a gap that forms an entrance to the circle, which is marked by 2 large outer stones which point towards the midwinter sunrise. There have been few finds from excavations, but they did discover that the area had been flattened prior to the erection of the stones, and folklore says that the devil was trying to prevent the building of a church, so kept tearing it down as it was being built and threw the stones to their current location. The circle is considered to be a cousin of the Rollright Stones due to the similar size, shape and position of the stones, but we did notice a unique feature here at Swinside.
The first thing that struck me as we were coming towards the circle was this rock here. From a distance it looked like it had carvings on there of some kind, whereas now we're closer up you can see there's lines going all around it. It's like a sedimented rock or something, and you can see almost different minerals in the rocks and different things growing on there. So it's like different types of minerals, different types of rock in there. It really stood out because it doesn't look like any of the other rocks in the circle. Every other rock is kind of the same granite sort of rock.
It is estimated that there are 1,300 stone circles in the UK, so we travelled into Scotland to see how far north they go, and to see some of the different shapes and sizes they are found in. We went to a pretty unique structure close to Edinburgh that looked like a flying saucer had landed and grass grew on top of it. It was about 30 metres in diameter with a 3 to 4 metre tall burial mound in the centre. There is an area circling the mound made from small rocks with holes built into it. Then you have the circle made from small stones followed by a ditch surrounding the entire structure. In Aberdeenshire we visited a recumbent stone circle featuring a stone lying on its side and upright stones flanking it, a feature found in another 100 or so circles in this area. At this one there are 9 stones, 8 of which are grey granite and 1 red jasper, and the recumbent stone is full of crystals and lines of quartz. It's thought to have been built to serve as a calendar, but we don't see why they would need so many in one region. Surely they could just build a few and spread information by word of mouth. Stone circles are even found on remote islands off the coast of Scotland. We took the ferry to the Orkney Islands to visit the UNESCO World Heritage listed Brodgar Ring. This stone circle is 104 metres in diameter and the third largest in the British Isles, set within a circular ditch carved out of the solid sandstone bedrock by our ancestors, which is up to 3 metres deep, 9 metres wide and 380 metres in circumference. Nowadays there are 36 stones standing from an original 60, and surrounding the henge there are at least 13 burial mounds. Similarities are found with other henges. For example, the diameter of the bank at Brodgar is almost exactly the same as the inner bank at Avebury, 125 megalithic yards. Like with the henges we visited in England, when you survey the area surrounding the Brodgar Ring you find many other sites. Within 2 square miles are groups of standing stones, barrows, mounds, 4 chambered tombs and 2 other henges. About 5.5 miles from Brodgar is a stone-built Neolithic settlement consisting of 8 clustered houses, occupied continuously for 6 centuries from 3200 to around 2600 BC, after which it was mysteriously abandoned and perhaps deliberately covered over like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. It is Europe's most complete Neolithic village, dubbed the Scottish Pompeii due to its excellent preservation, which is because it was covered until a severe storm in 1850 caused waves so large they washed off the earth and revealed underneath a number of small structures without roofs. Each dwelling was entered through a low 4-foot doorway, making us wonder how tall the inhabitants really were. Each has a primitive form of toilet with a drainage system incorporated into the village's design. They contained a number of stone-built pieces of furniture including beds, cupboards, dressers, seats, storage boxes and hearths in the centre to have fires. Some suggest the inhabitants were taken by surprise and fled in a hurry, as many of their possessions were left behind. A number of interesting artefacts have been discovered, and although now well excavated, very little is known about the people who lived at Skara Brae or their origins. In his book, Laird Scranton details links between the Orkneys, ancient Egypt and the Dogon, both of which he thinks were heavily connected at the time of Skara Brae's creation. The Dogon have maintained a high level of knowledge over the millennia, and even knew of Sirius B before mainstream science, and they talk about how things exist in wave and solid state form, ideas being discussed in modern day quantum physics. He shows how the earliest Skara Brae dwellings matched the typical Dogon stone houses, with similar heights of the walls, random placing of small slabs, and discussion houses to make decisions and resolve conflicts. He has found linguistic connections between the Orkneys and Egyptian, Dogon, Chinese and Vedic traditions, with place names on the island that cannot be traced to local languages, and he also demonstrates how ancient Greek and Egyptian writings describe geographic locations on the Orkney Islands. Our tour was nearly over, but as we headed back south we stopped off to see 3 tall standing stones situated on the fairway of a golf course. Standing stones, also known as menhirs, are often associated with other megalithic monuments, but not always, which is the case with these huge stones of around 5 meters tall, which people can try and hit with golf balls. They form a large triangle, although it is claimed that there is a stone missing and they used to stand in a large rectangular arrangement. Either way, it was puzzling to us what this site was built for and why so much effort must have been made to move and erect these gigantic stones. It didn't seem like the site was for rituals or burying the dead, which are the usual reasons archaeologists come up with.
Each of these sites raises more questions than it answers. You know, we're trying to show you how much mystery there is to the UK megalithic world, I guess, and this is another one of the puzzle pieces that shows that possibly the official story is, you know, a load of rubbish. Possibly not, who knows.
To see the last site on our first megalithic road trip, we went back into England and to the beautiful Lake District.
We're not far from the Scottish border at Druid Circle, otherwise known as Long Meg and her daughters. There are over 60 stones here. It's a massive circle right out in the middle of nowhere. We have a farm over here. The first thing that caught our attention is this feature over here, where there's 2 stones. We noticed this at Swinside the other day, where you have this double-stoned feature. Now, when standing in the centre of the circle, you're facing this way. It's directly southwest towards this double feature here, and it points towards Long Meg.
We went to see Long Meg as we wanted to show how one of the sides was incredibly straight, almost appearing to have been cut by a machine, and how the red rock was obviously selected on purpose as it stood out from the other 60 grey stones in the circle. Long Meg also has some cup marks, spirals and circular shapes carved onto it, and spirals like these can be found all around the world, such as in the USA, Norway, Croatia, Namibia, and many others. David Talbot has done some fascinating work comparing rock art from around the world and drawing similarities between myths and legends from various ancient cultures. He has been able to paint a picture of events that took place in our past. He thinks the planets were in different positions in the ancient skies, and thinks some of the rock art represents highly charged electrical events which took place when the celestial bodies moved close to each other.
A stick man with no head, just a duck or other bird on his shoulders? Hundreds of variations on this theme occur in the American Southwest. But the pattern doesn't end there. Notice the twin dots on the 2 sides of these crudely crafted stick figures. One instance alone is just a curiosity. But widespread patterns must have an explanation. And other details only accent the irrationality. Recently, an answer to these mysteries came from outside traditional archaeology, from plasma science and laboratory experiments with electric discharge. Plasma scientist Anthony Peratt of Los Alamos Laboratories has shown that these stick forms recorded electrical events in the sky. Something like the northern lights we see today, but 1,000 times more energetic. And he matches the rock art forms precisely to the configurations taken by electric discharge in the laboratory. The rock art images are explained as sheets of intense electric current in the evolution of a plasma discharge. The central column you see in this stylized representation is the axis of the discharge. Wrapped around the axis is a torus or donut-like tubular sheet of charged particles. The observer sees through the transparent formation, champagne glass above, squashed bell shape below, so the plasma density is greatest at the limbs. Drawn in 2 dimensions, the formation matches the stick man carved globally on stone by the thousands.
Looking at a map of where the megalithic sites are distributed around the British Islands, it is strange to see how there are none in the east part of England, particularly as the rest of the UK and Wales are covered, and even stranger when you realise the megalithic builders crossed the water into Ireland and France. We were told by somebody we met that a meteorite hit and destroyed the ruins that were previously there, but we cannot find anything online to back this up. Being from England, I know this part of the island to be lower in elevation, and when I compared a map showing the distribution of megaliths to a map showing the loss of land with an increase in seawater levels, I could see an obvious relationship between the two. Maybe these sites were built when the water levels were higher, and that is why they didn't build in these flooded areas, and we wonder if further investigation into this could help us with the aging of these sites. Since the UK trip, we have spent years exploring, investigating and filming various ancient sites around the world, and we are now convinced there was a global civilization older and more advanced than the mainstream claims. Our last trip in December 2016 was just across the English Channel, when we went to see some pretty amazing structures. The first was the Grand Menhir de Brice, a single stone that is now broken into 4 pieces, which when first erected would have stood just over 20 metres and weighed 350 tonnes. To put that into perspective, if you look at Boeing's website, they state the weight of a 747 is 80 tonnes, so that rock weighed the same as just over 4 of these planes. We find it hard to believe that the Neolithic people moved and erected these stones using rope and rolling them on logs, an idea that becomes even more absurd when you look at the largest single standing stones in the world. The unfinished obelisk in Aswan and the stone of the pregnant woman in Baalbek weigh in the region of 1,200 tonnes. There are hundreds if not thousands of single stones from all over the world that weigh over 100 tonnes, and if you add up the total amount of rock transported at some of these sites, like another we visited in the northwest of France, you have to wonder if these ancient stone masons were able to move rock with ease.
So, this is Carnac. Quite an amazing place, as you can see. I'm kind of used to cycling or driving right out into the country just to see one of these things. And for 4 kilometers stretching off in that direction, you've got about 3,000 megalithic stones. They're all of different sizes. The largest is 77 tons. These are some of the bigger ones, but they do get down to just like tiny little, half a meter tall stones. They go off in alignments. You can see running right down here, they just go off in a line. There are, at the widest point, 12 of these lines, and at other areas they get skinnier and you can have just 2 or 1. But it's an absolutely amazing place. Probably one of the best megalithic sites you can see. What could be better? This makes Stonehenge look like nothing.
Yeah, so this is really much more like a long barrow than the dolmen, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, they're more or less the same thing, but one is just kind of long and covered in earth. This one hasn't got much earth around it, but it's got like a small brick wall around it. It looks old also. But this is probably, like with a lot of these sites, been used at different ages. Like the dolmen builders and the tomb builders did it a long time ago, and then more recently these guys who built with the smaller blocks have come along and adapted them for their needs at the time. But this is a cool place. I like it. Brittany is one of the densest areas of megaliths in the world, but the whole of France is also covered with more than 10,000 sites estimated to stand within its borders. In 2013 we went on a road trip around the south to video more standing stones, some found in alignments and others stood on their own. We also videoed stone circles, although compared to the UK, France doesn't have all that many, and we filmed dolmen, of which France has plenty, such as this freestanding one that has a little tiny doorway, and interestingly enough is found at a place called St Michael's Priory. They have double-decker versions that look like one is stacked on top of another, and they also have others enclosed within mounds that you can imagine people living in. In 2014 we went on a road trip in the Spanish Pyrenees, filming standing stones, dolmen of varying sizes, and we found groups of stone circles high up in the hills in the west of the mountain range. These circles were made from smaller stones like the one we visited in northern Wales, although these in Spain tend to come in clusters of between 10 to 15 circles, sometimes grouped together with other structures like single stones, mounds or dolmen that have seen better days. And the stone circles keep on going across Europe. Before I owned a video camera, I camped next to the Portuguese Stonehenge, which is situated in an area near Évora known as the megalithic universe due to the presence of numerous sites. This circle has about 90 stones aligned northwest to southeast, built on the slope of a hill, with carvings on about a dozen or so of these stones. On the same trip we paid a visit to some interesting looking dolmen in the south of Spain that looked like igloos, and just like France, Spain is also covered in megaliths. We filmed a stone circle in the Alps on the border with France and Italy, and last year we made a film about some amazing collections of stone circles found in the woods of northern Poland. The layout of the circles at Venturi seemed to match the Pleiades constellation, and the circles at Odry aligned to certain solstices, and one of the circle lines even points towards Capella, a star also associated with the West Kennet Long Barrow. And the circles keep on going across Europe, but are also found across the entire planet in places such as the USA, Brazil. Many have been found in India, Armenia, Pakistan, Senegal, Japan, and the recent discovery of numerous stone circles close to the Syrian border in Turkey is forcing mainstream archaeologists to think again. This is because Göbekli Tepe has officially been dated to 9,500 years before Christ, and some of the artifacts found in the area are fascinating, such as this alien-looking statue and this reptilian-looking figure. So they are distributed all over the world, and we visited what is perhaps the most impressive set of stone circles on the planet when we flew down to the south of Africa at the end of 2014. Just over a decade ago, a pilot discovered a megalithic complex on top of a cliff overlooking the beautiful Barberton Valley. There are hundreds of megalithic blocks, some that have clearly been shaped, and there is a stone circle that has been named Adam's Calendar due to a number of solstice alignments. There are some hills that are shaped like pyramids, but the most interesting discovery is the dry stone wall circles, some of which appear to be connected by channels or veins. Michael Tellinger, who is the main researcher in that part of the world, estimates there are between 1 and 10 million stone circles that cover the northeast of South Africa and stretch across the border into Zimbabwe and Botswana. Like Stonehenge, the stones have acoustic properties and ring like bells, and it has been suggested that the layout of the circles has been specifically designed to match the sacred geometry patterns or somatics of the telluric energies. This would allow the stones to harness this energy. This theory is fascinating, and we recommend the work of Michael Tellinger, who documents his findings online very well if you want to know more. The story is the same when we look at the global distribution of dolmen. This structure is a bit of a mystery really due to the variety in height, shape, and the number of stones used. Some have corridors and others have little rectangular or circular holes that resemble doors or windows. There is an even larger variety in the size of the dolmen around the world than in the UK. You find small ones like these we found in the south of France, while the largest in the world is in South Korea with a height of 2.6 meters and a capstone estimated to weigh 300 tons. As we mentioned earlier, the official story that they were used as tombs isn't backed up by much, so we should consider alternative ideas. Some of those flying around the internet are that they were used by the living for rituals and ceremonies. Possibly shaman would use them when entering altered states of consciousness or trying to contact ancestors. Some say they were built by giants, and others that they were homes for hobbits. A theory that we like is that they were used to create energy using wind, music or telluric energies to resonate the stones, causing compression of the crystals and a discharge of electrons. One thing we've observed at most of the sites we have visited is a high crystal content in the rocks, and crystals have some amazing properties, such as the piezoelectric effect where if you put them under pressure they produce electricity. It is this property that has made them a vital part of modern day technology, such as watches, microprocessors and many other electronic gadgets. So it's not ludicrous to consider that the ancients chose certain stones that could interact with earthly energies to benefit them in some way. One thing we can be sure about is that they are found all across the planet. We filmed some amazing fields of dolmen in Jordan where 10 or more are grouped together in fields, some with oven doors, some completely ruined, while others are still standing. In the Gamla National Park in Israel there are thousands of them, and we noticed a high number of trees growing inside or right next to the structures. Something we have also noticed at other places around the world with various types of vegetation flourishing in or around the megaliths. This ties in with the work of John Burke, who writes about his findings that seeds placed on megaliths tend to grow better with a greater resistance to drought and parasites, causing the crops to have greater yields. As well as in the Middle East, we have seen dolmen all across Europe, and even on the isolated island of Malta. They are also found in Colombia, Sweden, China, the USA and Canada, in great numbers in India and Russia where they have little circular windows, but most astonishingly of all, there are something like 30,000 dolmen in North and South Korea. That's 40% of the world's dolmen on that tiny peninsula. Single standing stones also have a global distribution, and when we combine the maps showing the menhirs, dolmen and stone circles, it doesn't seem like such a crazy idea that there was once a global civilization in our ancient past. If you are not convinced yet, we can add the pyramids such as those in China, Bosnia, Mexico, as well as all those that are still not recognised by the mainstream, such as the sites we visited in Italy or others found in Russia or Slovenia. We can add the cart ruts that we filmed on the Maltese Islands, which are also found across Europe as well as the Azores, Turkey, Mexico and Brazil. Stone spheres from Costa Rica are the most famous, but they are also found in Bosnia, Mexico, Spain, Kazakhstan, on the beach in New Zealand and various other countries. There are similarities between statues, such as those found in Indonesia and on Easter Island. Huge temples such as those in Jordan, Peru, India or Cambodia, and most of these countries have more than one of these structures. If you study the location of many of these sites, you see curious mathematical relationships. Hugh Newman has done some great work regarding the distances between Giza, the planet's prime meridian, and various ancient and sacred sites.
These are the degrees numbered here between sites themselves, not from Giza, but it's between other sites. For example, I don't know if any of you have heard of the Bosnian pyramids. They found a whole complex of pyramids in Bosnia, so Eastern Europe, which is actually larger than the pyramids of Giza. And this is pretty sort of new information. But for example, the Bosnian pyramids to Machu Picchu in Peru is exactly 90 degrees, you know, which is a neat harmonic, a quarter of a circle basically. And we see all these different ideas, and there's many more than this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. And with the book, with the research, I just look at quite well-known large sites. I'm not looking at any smaller sites, which could also be markers for this system, global system as well.
In his book, you can find many harmonic distances between various ancient sites, as well as religiously significant sites such as Canterbury, the heart of the Church of England, which is 30 degrees west of Giza. He also gives details of latitudinal harmonics. For example, the Thebes temple in Egypt is 2/7 of the distance between the equator and the North Pole, and Avebury sits at 4/7 between the two. There is 1 degree between the Greek sites of Delphi, Dodona and Delos, lying along the Apollo-St Michael's ley line, and on our trip around the UK we noticed how the Brodgar Ring falls almost exactly on the 59th degree of latitude, and the Rollright Stones on the 52nd degree. So it appears that not only was there a global civilization building these structures, but they were positioning them at particular points around the planet, points that form a grid and connect all of these sites around the world. The Becker-Hagens grid is the most recent attempt to map these ley lines, but we think it will be a lot more complicated when more discoveries have been made on this topic. To this day, we are still discovering some of the mathematical relationships, both at these sites and between them. It is thought they positioned these stone monuments where they did to harness and use the telluric energies running through the ground. This is a theory that may be hard for some to accept if their perception is focused on the five-sense world and they have accepted that our ancestors were intellectually inferior to ourselves. We must remind them that although a lot of these structures are just rocks in fields, we extract all of our metals from minerals, and without metals and the piezoelectric properties of crystals, we would not have modern-day technology. We also only perceive a tiny portion of our reality. Visible light is only a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. The air around us is absolutely full of energy and activity, and we would be foolish not to consider other dimensions and realms when trying to understand the function of these ancient sites. Also, the wave-particle duality principle tells us that so-called solid particles, which everything is made from, can also exist as waveforms when not observed, and quantum physics has many strange anomalies that should stop some of us thinking we know it all. If there was a global civilization that built these structures from carefully selected crystal-saturated rocks, positioned on a complex grid to harness telluric energies, then they must have been pretty intellectually advanced, and there are plenty of other pieces of evidence being discovered that back this up. Looking at the flat side of Long Meg, you could imagine a machine or laser cutting it, and there are other highly accurate examples of rock shaping from around the world. The drill holes found in Peru are quite amazing and surely impossible to make with hammer and chisel type tools. as would be the precisely carved stones found at Pumapunku. The perfect symmetry of some of the Egyptian statues highly impresses author and engineer Christopher Dunn, and an extremely high level of accuracy would have been required to carve the stone spheres found in Costa Rica. Another site I visited before I started filming was carved onto the side of a mountain in Bulgaria, where there are a host of steps, doorways, holes and channels that made me think I was walking around an ancient factory. One even looked like the dock for a CPU processor. And you find some amazing engineering projects, such as the various temples found around the world, or the amazing collection of 40 underground cities in Cappadocia in Turkey that have been built up to 13 stories below the ground, could house between 20 to 60,000 people, and had doors that could only be shut from the inside. As we mentioned earlier, some huge stones have been transported from one location to another, and one of the most impressive is at Ollantaytambo in Peru.
So you have to wonder, why would the Incas, or even the pre-Inca stonemasons, want to come up here on top of this mountain and then quarry these 100-ton, 200-ton, 500-ton blocks of granite, and then with some superhuman effort just drag them miles down this mountain, across a river, and then up the mountain on the other side to the Sun Temple. I mean, it makes you think, could it have been actually easy for them to do this?
So is it possible they had machines or technology to help them move these massive rocks? Well, there are a few artifacts that make this more plausible. For example, the Baghdad battery discovered in Iraq, and some of the Egyptian hieroglyphs showing light bulb type devices, or even those at Abydos that look like a helicopter and some kind of flying machine. Our ancestors carved massive geoglyphs in the deserts of Peru. The famous Nazca lines require a high level of intelligence to create, and because they can only really be seen from a good height, it suggests they were communicating with something in the sky. There are also other curious shapes carved into the deserts of Jordan and Kazakhstan, so other people had similar ideas at some point in our past. Maybe they were communicating with Vimanas, the flying machines detailed in the ancient Vedic texts from India, or maybe a larger version of the flying machines which Klaus Donner discovered in South America, which were aerodynamically designed and can actually fly. These golden flying machines are part of a large collection of mind-blowing artifacts Klaus Donner lectures about, such as the amazing stone disc he found in Colombia which seems to show fertilization and the development of the embryo, and a pyramid found in Ecuador with a fluorescent all-seeing eye similar to the one found on the $1 bill. Our civilization is supposed to have begun around 5000 BC when the Sumerians gave us religion, politics, a class system, schooling, writing, paper, metal, astronomy and quite a lot more. But some recent discoveries are forcing us to reconsider when such organisation was first introduced to our species. There is a pyramid covered in megalithic stones in Indonesia that has been built over 4 different ages, the older sections of which are officially being dated to around 20,000 years ago. And those stone circles found in Göbekli Tepe are officially dated to 4,500 years before the Sumerian culture emerged. The potential pyramids in Bosnia are not officially recognised to be man-made structures, but alternative thinkers believe they are pyramids that were built 29,000 years ago. Robert Schock, who graduated with a PhD in geology from Yale University, says that the weathering found on the back of the Sphinx is due to prolonged exposure to torrential rain, and the last time weather like that was seen on the Giza Plateau was during the 5th or 6th millennium BC. Perhaps the most convincing evidence has been presented by Graham Hancock, who showed some temple-looking structures off the coast of Japan, so deep under the water they must have been built before the last ice age.
We stick pretty much to plan, descending at once to what looks like a flat pathway running along the base of the main structure at a depth of about 85 feet. But no matter how hard I argue each anomaly with Wolf, he puts up a geological counter-explanation. Sharp-edged steps and flat terraces, smooth paths, corridors with guttering, square holes, rounded holes, intricate pools cut down into the rock, and finally monoliths aligned on the opening of a tunnel. All these things, Wolf says, were shaped by local erosive forces and are 100% natural. None, he says, have ever been modified by man. All he'll admit is that it's an amazing place.
Mainstream archaeologists still claim the structures close to Yonaguni are natural, but we find it hard to agree, as when we watch the footage taken by Graham and his team, it reminds us of numerous sites we have visited over the years. As well as Yonaguni, there are other structures found under the sea surface, such as Bimini Road in the waters close to Florida, and others found off the coast of India and Malta, although these are not as deep as those found in Japan. There are also plenty of artefacts found around the world that don't fit into the official story. Richard Thompson and Michael Cremo have collected evidence that suggests human civilizations have actually been around for a lot longer than most researchers propose.
In their controversial book, Forbidden Archaeology, Michael Cremo and Dr. Richard Thompson have documented hundreds of these anomalous artifacts which have yet to be explained.
The basic body of evidence that we've uncovered in this book suggests that human beings of modern anatomical type have been existing for many, many millions of years into the past.
In 1880, California state geologist J.D. Whitney was intrigued by an unexpected discovery made 300 feet under Table Mountain. While digging for gold, miners unearthed a variety of stone tools, such as mortar and pestles and ladles. Incredibly, the rock strata the tools were reportedly found in was dated as early as 55 million years old. Whitney made a thorough report of these finds and came to an unsettling conclusion. Man could be millions of years older than the current evolutionary model suggests.
My reaction was one of shock. I had heard of human footprints being found in this locale on the Biloxi near Glen Rose, Texas, but I was rather skeptical. And here, after removing actual rock layers, the team and I excavated a series of dinosaur footprints. And 18 1/2 inches from one of those dinosaur footprints, we excavated a 16-inch human footprint. We excavated 12 footprints in a series. And when you find a trail with left, right pace and stride, the right distance apart, then you have to interpret this as belonging to humankind.
So how far does the rabbit hole go, and what do we find at the bottom of the iceberg? While these stone-built structures might continue into the depths of the solar system, with potential pyramids and a mile-wide face on Mars, or the monolith found on Phobos, one of its moons. There are reports from NASA of anomalous structures found on the largest planetoid in the asteroid belt. There is a peculiar ridge on the Saturn moon of Iapetus that goes around the entire equator, and strange and unnatural looking structures on the moon. In his 1993 speech to the UN, Richard Hoagland presented evidence that he thinks proves the existence of a fifth dimension, as well as evidence that the face and pyramids found on planet Mars are linked to Avebury.
And lo and behold, this is what he got. And the angles and positions of ancient features, including where the cliff would be and where the tetrahedral pyramid would be, and angles to other key things in this vicinity, all seem to match, including the very size of Silbury Hill in terms of its exterior moat in reference to the Tholus. Well, this, of course, is unbelievable, but, and I want you to look at this. Here's now is the crater on Mars. Here's the tetrahedral pyramid. You're now looking from this direction at Avebury. Here's the ring here, which it would be up like here, and notice here, there's a mound and a gap. and here's the gap, and there's the separation, and there's the mound, and that's, of course, tetrahedral pyramid, there is something at Avebury which corresponds exactly geometrically. It's a raised portion of the circular pile-up earthen moat around this, corresponding exactly numerically to the tetrahedral pyramid at Cydonia on Mars. I noticed that Silbury Hill, which is south of a place called Avebury, also seems to have a very curious resemblance to the Tholus at Cydonia. As you know, there is this spiral that winds around the Tholus, and here, if you take this cone and you include this enclosure as the actual base, all right, the morphology is eerily identical, including this spiral path that seems to wind down the Silbury Hill, which is the largest man-made earthen mound in all of Europe.
Our continuing aim is to show there was once a global civilization before our current one, and we believe the distribution of megaliths around the world strongly substantiates this theory and is pretty hard to argue with. If you would like to look into just how many megaliths there are and how they are widely distributed around the world, megalithic.co.uk is a great source of information and has been very helpful to us over the years. If some of these topics are new to you, then please do your own investigations. Some of the researchers we have featured in this film are a great place to start. In this film, we have merely scratched the surface of the evidence that suggests this civilization is older and far more advanced, as there is so much information out there, and things are still being discovered each year. So the evidence is mounting up, but the mainstream media and official archaeologists still refuse to look with unbiased eyes, and continue to label alternative theories as pseudo-archaeology. But we will continue to add to this evidence in the hope that one day the general public will force the mainstream to accept that there was once a global civilization before the last ice age that was both spiritually and technologically more advanced than the current one.
Action.
So we're at the ruins of Masada, which is an interesting place.
It is definitely ruined, I will say that. Yeah, the Romans did a good number on this.